Imagine paying £2,200 more for your mortgage this month than you did last month. Not next year, not in 6 months, this month. For thousands of Britons, this isn't imagination, it's Thursday. Welcome to Modern Britain, where London bankers still get their £1 million bonuses while teachers are using their own salary to buy classroom supplies. A tale of two countries living uncomfortably under the same rain-soaked sky. Let's put this in perspective. If London broke away tomorrow and became its own country, it would be the world's 22nd largest economy, bigger than Argentina and Sweden combined. A gleaming metropolis of glass towers and golden opportunities. But step just outside the M25 and you're looking at living standards that would make Mississippi look like Monaco. This isn't just another story about economic decline. This is about how a nation that invented the Industrial Revolution is now speedrunning the de-industrial revolution. A country that once ruled the waves is now struggling to keep its head above water. The numbers? They're about as pretty as a British summer. In the last decade, real disposable income, the money you actually get to spend after the government takes its share, hasn't just stagnated. It's been doing the economic equivalent of a British queue, standing perfectly still while everything else moves forward. Let's talk about the British dream. Remember when owning a home wasn't just for lottery winners? Today, Britain holds a record it never wanted, the highest number of homeless people in the developed world. Meanwhile, house prices just jumped another £2,200 in a single month. That's right, houses in Britain are earning more than people trying to buy them. But how did a country that once dominated global trade end up here? Well, buckle up, this story has more plot twists than a BBC drama series. It started in 2008, when the financial crisis hit and Britain decided to handle it with all the finesse of a drunk butler at a royal wedding. While other countries invested in their recovery, Britain chose austerity. The government's brilliant plan: bail out the banks for £141 billion, then tell everyone else to tighten their belts. It's like treating a broken leg by giving painkillers to the doctor. The results? Let's compare. In 2007, the average British household was just 8% less prosperous than Norway and 6% behind the United States. Fast forward through this economic masterclass, and British families now sit 20% behind Norway and 16% behind the US. That's not a gap, that's a canyon. But wait, it gets better. Or worse, depending on how much you enjoy economic tragicomedy. Enter Brexit, COVID, and the Ukraine war. A perfect storm for economic disasters that hit Britain like consecutive episodes of Black Mirror. Brexit uncertainty scared away foreign investors faster than British weather scares away tourists. The Bank of England estimates investment dropped by 25% between 2016 and 2021. Then COVID came along, and the government borrowed another £280 billion back when interest rates were so low they made your savings account look generous at 0.1%. Just when Britain thought it had weathered the storm, the Ukraine war turned those manageable loan payments into a financial nightmare. Interest rates shot up faster than London property prices, and suddenly that COVID debt became about as comfortable as a seat in economy class on a long-haul flight. But here's where it gets really interesting. Britain's debt interest payments jumped from £40 billion per year to about £100 billion. For perspective, that £60 billion increase is nearly the entire British defense budget. Imagine spending your entire military budget just on paying the interest of your loans. It's like using your entire paycheck to pay the minimum due on your credit card. But the real kicker? The workforce. While every other major economy bounced back after COVID, Britain's workforce decided to take an extended tea break. Officially, unemployment is low at 4.4%, a number that looks good until you realize it's missing about 11 million people who are economically inactive. That's government speak for not technically unemployed, just not working. The solution? Open the borders wider than a London pub on a Friday night. Immigrant workers, primarily from South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, rushed in to fill the gaps. But this rapid demographic change has sparked social tensions hotter than a curry from Brick Lane. Let's break down these economically inactive 11 million people, because this isn't just about a statistic. It's a demographic disaster hiding in plain sight. About 2.1 million are students, which sounds fine until you realize they're accumulating debt that would make an American university blush. Another 3.5 million over 50s have checked out early, not because they're living the retirement dream, but because they're too sick to work. And let's not forget the million people aged 25 to 49 who can't work because they're caring for others. Because Britain's social care system is about as reliable as its summer weather forecast. Remember productivity? That thing that determines how much value you create per hour of work? Britain's gone from being second only to the US in the G7 to performing like a student who's given up halfway through the semester. Before 2008, productivity was growing at a healthy 2% annually. Now, it's growing slower than a queue at NHS. Speaking of growth, let's talk about what this means for the average Brit. Your paycheck isn't just standing still, it's moonwalking backwards. While prices sprint ahead like they're running the London Marathon, wages are moving with all the urgency of a Sunday driver. The cost of living hasn't just increased, it's performing an economic mugging on the entire middle class. The public services, they're crumbling faster than a digestive biscuit in hot tea. The NHS waiting lists are so long you could read the complete works of Shakespeare while waiting for a GP appointment. Schools are holding bake sales not for extras, but for basics like books and pencils. And the roads have so many potholes, they're starting to look like modern art installations. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about John in Manchester who can't afford to heat his home despite working 2 jobs. It's about Sarah in Birmingham who's paying more in childcare than she makes at work. It's about entire communities watching their high streets transform into depressing collection of bedding shops and pound stores. London, meanwhile, continues to shine like a diamond in a coal mine. The city generates nearly half of the UK's GDP while housing about a third of its population. It's like having a Rolls-Royce attached to a rusty bicycle. One part gleaming success, the rest struggling to keep the wheels on. The future, well, that's where things get really interesting. Britain is essentially running a third world economy with a first world London stapled on top. It's like trying to power a Tesla with a steam engine. Something's gotta give. The government solutions so far have been about as effective as using a chocolate teapot. They're treating systematic problems with sticking plaster solutions. It's like trying to fix the Titanic with duct tape. Technically, you're doing something, but you're missing the bigger picture. But here's the real question nobody's asking. How long can a nation function when its capital city operates in a different economic universe than the rest of the country? When your financial center is playing Champions League while the rest of the country is struggling in the Sunday League? The truth is, Britain isn't just facing an economic crisis, it's facing an identity crisis. A nation that once prided itself on innovation and industry now finds itself with a service economy more fragile than a royal marriage. The country that gave the world the Industrial Revolution is now leading the charge in deindustrialization, though that's probably not the kind of world leadership they had in mind. So what's the way forward? Well, that's the £652 billion question, coincidentally the current worth of London's economy. The path to recovery requires more than just economic policy changes. It needs a complete rethink of what kind of nation Britain wants to be in the 21st century. Until then, Britain will continue to be a tale of 2 nations, London and everything else. A first world city carrying a declining nation on its shoulders like Atlas with a very localized weight problem. Remember that British stiff upper lip? It's getting quite the workout these days. But then again, that's what Britain does best. Keeping calm and carrying on even when the carrying gets heavy and the calm becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. For now, London stands tall, a glittering monument to what Britain once was and perhaps could be again. But as the gap between the capital and the rest of the country grows wider than the Thames at high tide, one has to wonder, is this sustainable? Can a nation function with its heart racing while its limbs grow cold? Maybe the next chapter of Britain's story is still being written. After all, this is a nation that has reinvented itself more times than a rock star's comeback tour. The question isn't whether Britain will change, it's what it will change into. And as the rain continues to fall equally on both the glass towers of Canary Wharf and the boarded up shops of forgotten high streets, perhaps that's the story we should be watching. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on the notifications for the next updates.